YouTube, this is CN Maritime History here back again with another video, and tonight I will be talking about the SS Morro Castle, the ship that went down in flames. Now this is a rare occurrence on my channel. We are covering a pretty well-known ocean liner, or at least it's more well-known than others. But I typically don't cover somewhat well-known ocean liners, so this is a first. Well, I have in the past on my old channel, but I'll just try and remake all those videos that were taken down. Also, disclaimer, most of the pictures you see on here are not the Morro Castle as she was. Most of them are her as her, burnt out state. For example, here is one of the only ones I found. She's burned out after the fire. This one, I don't know how I found this. This was lucky. Also burnt out, and burnt out again. Like it's a hole in that shell after the fire. But anyway, let's not get the spoilers just yet. Let's start the video. SS Morro Castle was a luxury ocean liner of the 1930s that was built for the Ward Line for runs between New York City and Havana, Cuba. The Morro Castle was named for the Morro Castle fortress that guards the entrance to Havana Bay. On the morning of September 8, 1934, en route from Havana to New York, the ship caught fire and burned, killing 137 passengers and crew members. The ship eventually beached herself near Asbury Park, New Jersey, and remained there for several months until she was towed off and scrapped. The devastating fire aboard the SS Morro Castle was a catalyst for improved shipboard fire safety, just as the Titanic was for improved lifeboat capacity. Today, the use of fire-retardant materials, automatic fire doors, ship-wide fire alarms, and greater attention to fire drills and procedures resulted directly from the Morro Castle disaster. The building of the Morro Castle. Also, as you can see, the lifeboats on here are pretty wrecked. One of them, 3 davits sits down. It's like warped in the middle, as you can see in this picture. And some of them aren't even there. Oh, sorry. On May 22nd, 1928, the U.S. Congress passed the Merchant Marine Act of 1928, creating a $250 million construction fee to be lent to U.S. shipping companies to replace old and outdated ships with new ones. Each of these loans, which would subsidize as much as 75% of the cost of the ship, was to be paid back over 20 years at very low interest rates. One company that quickly availed itself of this opportunity was the Ward Line, officially the New York and Cuba Mail Steamship Company, which had been carrying passengers, cargo, and mail to and from Cuba since the mid-19th century. Naval architects were hired by the line to design a pair of passenger and cargo liners to be named SS Morro Castle after the stone fortress and lighthouse in Havana, and SS Oriente after Oriente Province in Cuba. I think I pronounced that right. At the Newport News Shipbuilding and Dry Dock Company, work was begun on Morro Castle in January 1929. In March 1930, Morro Castle was christened, followed in May by her sister ship Oriente. Each ship was 508 feet long, measured 11,520 gross registered tonnage, and had turboelectric transmission with General Electric twin-turbo generators supplying current to propulsion motors on 2 propeller shafts. Each ship was luxuriously finished to accommodate 489 passengers in first and tourist class, which tourist pretty much replaced third, along with 240 crew members and officers. So in 1930s, they dropped second. It's now first cabin tourist, I believe. Maybe I messed it up, I don't know. I think I got that right. Along with 240 crew members and officers. The cost of each ship was estimated at about $5 million. Now, I don't think that's today's money. I think that's back then. This is a really nice painting that I found of her. Morro Castle began her maiden voyage on the 23rd of August, 1930. She lived up to expectations by completing the maiden 1,100-plus mile southbound trip in just under 59 hours, and the return trip only took 58 hours. Over the next 4 years, the Morro Castle and Oriente were luxury ship workhouses, rarely out of service, and despite the worsening Great Depression, able to maintain a steady clientele. Their success was in part due to Prohibition, as such trips provided a relatively affordable and, more importantly, legal means of enjoying a non-stop drinking party. After all, with Prohibition in the United States, even the Mauritania was used for so-called booze cruises. The words didn't come from me. That's just what they were called. However, the reasonable rates also attracted Cuban and American businessmen and older couples, making the ships a proverbial melting pot of America. But, yeah, like I said, I didn't, those, what I had said, that kind of cruise, that was really common back then. And the government pretty much just let it slide because it wasn't in their territory. They really didn't care. They just cared if it was in the United States. Or at least that's what I have figured out from this. Disaster. The final voyage of Morro Castle began in Havana on September 5, 1934. On the afternoon of the 6th, as the ship paralleled the southeastern coast of the United States, it began to encounter increasing clouds and wind. By the morning of the 7th, the clouds had thickened and the winds had shifted to easterly, the first indication of a developing nor'easter. Throughout the day, the winds increased and intermittent rains began, causing many to retire early to their berths. Early that evening, Captain Robert Wilmot had his dinner delivered to his quarters. Shortly thereafter, he complained of stomach trouble, and not long after that died of an apparent heart attack. Command of the ship passed to the chief officer, William Worms. During the overnight hours, the winds increased to over 30 miles per hour as the Morro Castle plodded its way up the eastern seaboard. This is a picture of the Morro Castle on fire. At around 2:50 a.m. on September the 8th, while the ship was sailing around 8 nautical miles off Long Beach, a fire was detected in a storage locker in the first-class writing room on B-deck. For the next 30 minutes, the Morro Castle became engulfed in flames. As the fire grew in intensity, acting Captain Worms attempted to beach the ship. With a growing need to launch lifeboats, and abandoned ship forced him to give up this strategy. Within 20 minutes of the fire's discovery, at about 3:10, the fire burned through the ship's main electrical cables, plunging the ship in the darkness. As all power was lost, the radio stopped working as well, so the crew were cut off from radio contact after issuing one single SOS transmission. Which, to be honest, Titanic sent like 10 or so before she was picked up, if I remember correctly. At about the same time, picked up by like the Carpathia and the Frankfurt, the Mount Tempo, and the... There's more of them I know, that's just all the ones off the top of my head. At about the same time, the wheelhouse lost the ability to steer the ship, as those hydraulic lines were also severed by the fire. Cut off by the fire amidships, passengers tended to gravitate towards the stern. Most crew members, on the other hand, moved to the forecastle. On the ship, no one could see anything. In many places, the deck boards were hot to the touch, and it was hard to breathe through the thick smoke. As conditions grew steadily worse, the decision became either jump or burn for many passengers. That will also be the situation for another video topic coming up, the MV Doña Paz. That's the most horrible peacetime tragedy in history. Out of all on board, I believe only like 13 survived. Compared to the Titanic, there's a lot more people dying. So Titanic is no longer the worst peacetime maritime disaster. It's Doña Paz, and worst disaster of all time in maritime history would be the Gustloff, which I will talk about when I get my model, which should be tomorrow. So I will definitely make that video soon. And let's just keep going with the video. However, jumping into the water was problematic as well. The sea, whipped by high winds, turned to great waves that made it extremely difficult to swim. On the decks of the burning ship, the crew and passengers exhibited a full range of reactions to the disaster at hand. Some crew members were incredibly brave as they tried to fight the fire. Others tossed deck chairs and life rings overboard to provide persons in the water, that's what it says, with makeshift flotation devices. Only 6 of the ship's 12 lifeboats were launched, boats 1, 3, 5, 9, and 11. That's why some of them were missing. On the starboard side, and boat 10 on the port side. Although the combined capacity of these boats was 408, they carried only 85 people, most of whom were crew members. Many passengers died for lack of knowledge on how to use the life preservers. As they hit the water, life preservers knocked many persons unconscious, leading to subsequent death by drowning, or broke victims' necks from the impact, killing them instantly. The rescuers were slow to react. The first rescue ship to arrive on the scene was the SS Andrea F. Lukenbach. 2 other ships, the SS Monarch of Bermuda and the SS City of Savannah, were slow in taking action after receiving the SOS, but eventually did arrive on the scene. A fourth ship to participate in the rescue operations was the SS President Cleveland, which launched a motorboat, basically a motorized lifeboat, that made a cursory circuit around the Morro Castle, and upon seeing nobody in the water along her route, retrieved her motorboat and left the scene. The Coast Guard vessels Tampa and Cahoon positioned themselves too far away to see the victims in the water and rendered little assistance. The Coast Guard's aerial station at Cape May, New Jersey, failed to send their float planes until local radio stations started reporting that dead bodies were washing ashore on the New Jersey beaches from Point Pleasant Beach to Spring Lake. In time, additional small boats arrived on the scene. The major problem was that in the large ocean swells, it was very difficult to see people in the water. A plane piloted by Harry Moore, governor of New Jersey and commander of the New Jersey Guard, helped boats to find survivors and bodies by dipping its wings and dropping markers. As news of the disaster spread, local citizens assembled on the coastline to retrieve the dead, nurse the wounded, and try to unite families that had been scattered between different rescue boats that landed on the New Jersey beaches. By mid-morning, the ship was totally abandoned and its burning hull drifted ashore, coming to a stop in shallow water off Asbury Park, New Jersey. Late that afternoon, at almost the exact spot that the New Era had wrecked in 1854, the fires continued to smolder for the next 2 days, and in the end, 135 passengers and crew, out of a total of 549, were lost. The ship was declared a total loss, and its charred hulk was finally towed away from the Asbury Park shoreline on March the 14th, 1935. And actually, this picture is of her at Asbury Park, as well as this one. And according to one account, later started settling by the stern and sank while being towed up the river. In the intervening months, because of its proximity to the boardwalk and the Asbury Park Convention Hall Pier, from which it was possible to wade out and touch the wreck with one's hands, it was treated as a destination for sightseeing trips, completed with stamped penny souvenirs and postcards for sale. Other accounts have it that the ship was towed to the Gravesend Bay on March 14, 1935, after serving as an Asbury Park attraction in the Baltimore on the 29th, where it was finally scrapped. Factors contributing to the fire. As far as the materials used in their construction were concerned, the elegant but highly flammable decor of the ship, veneered wooden surfaces and glued ply paneling, helped the fire to spread very quickly. The ship did have fire doors. There existed a wood-lined 6-inch opening between the wooden ceilings and the steel bulkheads, which provided the fire with a flammable pathway that bypassed the fire doors, enabling it to spread. The crew opened virtually all the working hydrants, dropping the water pressure to unusable levels everywhere, and the ship's Lyle gun, which was designed to fire a buoy to another ship to facilitate passenger evacuation in an emergency, was stored over the Morro Castle's ready room, which is where the fire originated. It had exploded just before 3 a.m., further spreading the fire and breaking windows, thereby allowing the near gale force winds to enter the ship and fan the flames. Finally, fire alarms in the ship produced a muffled, scarcely audible ring, according to passengers. And these are just some of the many, many, many factors contributing to the fire on the SS Morro Castle. In the inquiries that followed the disaster, there were criticisms of the response of the first officer's handling of the ship, the crew's response, and delay in calling for assistance. And definitely speaking, the few lifeboats that were launched to carry primarily crew, and no efforts were made by these boats to maneuver towards the ship's stern to pick up additional people. Captain Worms never left the bridge to determine the extent of damage and maintained the ship's bearing at full speed for some distance after the fire was known. After systems failed throughout the ship because of power loss, no effort was made to use the emergency steering gear or emergency lighting. And that is just some of the horrific things that they forgot to do on board the Morro Castle. Not horrific, but it could have been less horrific for the people on board the Morro Castle if, they had done most of the crew, like the acting captain and the first officer, all of them. If they had done, their jobs better, maybe they, would have been better for everybody. But who knows? You may never know what really happened and, what caused the fire, to be honest. But, this is the story of the Morro Castle. I hope you guys have had a good day. Smash that like button, and please subscribe, and leave a comment below for any video suggestions. Have a good day. Bye.